Thank you. So let me welcome everyone to the winter solstice meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission, also known as the December meeting. And I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
the Republic,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Next is roll call.
Albrecht, I have excused. Buckley,
Here. I'm sorry, present Union Township, Isabella County. Yeah.
Darren,
Present, Union Township, Isabella County.
Fuller, which I don't see him on here. LaBelle,
Present, Union Township, Isabella County.
Lapp,
Present, Union Township, Isabella County.
Shingles, I have as excused. And Squadrito,
Present, and I'm in the city of Mount Pleasant in Isabella County.
and Thering.
Present, Union Township, Isabella County.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. And let's see, next item is approval of tonight's agenda. So you have tonight's agenda, it was in the packet. We have a couple of new business items and then some carryover business items from things we've dealt with in the past. Is there anything else that anyone is aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as prepared.
I'll make that motion.
Uh, Okay, so we'll give the motion to Darren, second to LaBelle, to approve the agenda as prepared. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please either say aye or give a hand signal in the affirmative.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is adopted. So we have our agenda. Next item is approval of the minutes. So we last met on November 16th. We had a regular meeting last month. So we have the November minutes. Any corrections to the November 16th minutes?
I would move to approve the minutes as presented for November 16th, 2021.
So the motion by Thering to approve the minutes, November 16th minutes as prepared. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved.
Second by Lapp. Further discussion? Once again, all those in favor, please say aye or give a affirmative hand signal.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is adopted, so the minutes are approved. Next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. First item is updates from Commissioner Thering from Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Really, the only thing I really have to talk about is the board approved the fiscal year budget for 2022. That was our big thing, and it's been approved, so we can all move forward into 2022.
Are there any expenditures that are particularly relevant to us or that you can think of?
No,
Road or
No.
sidewalk projects, anything like that?
we've had some discussions about the Lincoln Road project, but nothing that really would involve the planning commission. No real discussion yet on the ARPA funds. I'm sure we're gonna get neck deep into that real soon. Being able to amend pass the budget was kind of obviously a big thing the last few meetings, so that's something that we really focused on, and we got there.
Okay. Any questions for Commissioner Thering, Board of Trustees related matters? Okay. Let's see. Next item is Buckley updates from Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, we had a meeting last month. Not a ton to report. We have a variance that was requested for some setback issues. And we're kind of talking through that. We actually wound up tabling that application just until we only had 4 votes. We did have a vote on the particular variance itself, but it was kind of a hung vote. We had only 4 attendees, so we did table that until I believe it'll be the first week of January that we'll review that. I do believe that we have added a permanent member to the Board of Appeals. I think that we are now, if I've heard right, I think we're now looking for some alternates to replace the alternate that was kind of upgraded to that permanent membership. So, but it's all in all still reasonably quiet on the ZBA.
Okay. Is the roster that was in our packet up to date then?
Yes, I believe it is,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So there's normally 5, but it just so happened that at that meeting there were only 4 and the alternates are vacant. So normally, is it true that the alternates would normally be there, at least one of them? And so it could be that an alternate could become a voting member if you need that to get to 5, or how does that
That's
work?
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. An alternate would be if we have a regular member that's not able to attend, then one of the alternates would be contacted. It just so happened on that particular evening that we were not able to get an alternate in place as well.
Any questions for Commissioner Buckley on this on ZBA related matters? Okay, thank you. And last item of this sort is Darren updates from sidewalks and pathways.
We have not had a meeting since our last planning commission meeting. Our next sidewalks and pathways team meeting is set for January 18th. So until then, I won't have any updates.
Okay. And then we are scheduled to meet with them in January, correct? And that will be that meeting on the 18th.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like,
So, yeah, you'll hear from our chair. So
okay. Okay. Any questions for Mike? All right.
I
All right.
did have a question, and I guess this goes back to Commissioner Thering. Did you do any discussion about a 2022 budget for sidewalks and pathways?
You know,
That you can recall.
yeah, there was probably something in there. That's something I can't recall right off the top of my head, and I don't know if Rodney could help out with that, but.
I can, yes. The various projects that we've had in process that have not been able to move forward, all of those projects have been carried over into 2022. And I've actually added the ones that were recommended by the sidewalk committee. Some of those were added in as well. So there's substantial budget for various sidewalk projects. Some of them are in the general fund. Some of them are in the the DDA district funds, but
Wonderful.
the projects are funded.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, let's spend some money, right? Or let's find some opportunities to spend some money.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? Any other correspondence or reports or presentations at this time?
I was just curious if Commissioner Darren was going to be remaining on board until we have a replacement for his position, or if his last meeting is in February, or what would be the status of that?
Ryan, I will probably resign after the February 22nd meeting. If they'll have me, because I think my tenure is till February 15th, I believe. And so if so requested, I'll hang on and hopefully we can get a replacement soon thereafter.
Well, if we can request that you hang on for several more years, I'd be happy to make that request.
It's gonna be, yeah. You're breaking up. I'm sorry. What?
The Webster rule is you don't leave until we're ready to let you go.
I know it. She really made it hard. Well, we should get in contact with Denise and see if she's willing to step back in.
You could do that. All right. I noticed that I kind of skipped over, and I don't want to let it go unmentioned. In connection with the ZBA, there's also in your packet the annual report from the ZBA. Although if I read the commentary that accompanied it, it sounds like because the state doesn't require it and because they assume that Ryan tells us things, that they may not give us another formal report after this year. Is that the way, am I reading that right?
We didn't have that direct conversation, but I know that I give you thrilling and edge of your seat reports on the ZBA, so maybe that is enough.
Okay. Well, anyway, do refer to that in your packet. I mean, it's like our report. It summarizes what took place during the year. I mean, I find it kind of nice to be able to sit down and look at something like that, but it isn't necessarily essential. So anyway, all right. So then we'll move on. So the next item is public comment. So this is the portion of the meeting where individuals are invited to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda. There's an extended public comment later for the agenda items, but at this time, it's items that are not on tonight's agenda. If there's anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission, you can raise your hand and we will recognize you and make it possible for you to speak. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I do note that we have public in attendance. So I don't know if they're here to comment or not, but public comment is open at 7:17. At least tonight anyway, the raise hand button is showing up as a raise hand button at the bottom of my screen. Sometimes it shows up as a, what's that other word? There's it.
Oh, as a reaction?
Reactions.
Yep.
And you have to go into it and kind of hunt for it, but.
Yeah, we set ours up so it was as obvious as we could make it. Yeah.
All right, I'm not seeing any raised hands on the attendees side, so going once, going twice. Okay, so we'll let that close that back up at 7:18, And again, there'll be an extended public comment later in the meeting. So we'll move on to the new business items. And the first new business item is a report on home occupation, home-based limited businesses from Peter Galinay, who attended a workshop recently and sent an email recently, just actually relatively before the meeting, with some links to that presentation and some other stuff. But I'll turn it over to Peter, and then we'll let any discussion on that ensue.
So if when you have time, there is a link in the email to the presentation recorded. I think it's on YouTube where they've put it, and it's a couple hours. The information that they go over, there's also a link to a publication. Originally, we were hoping to give you the publication in the packet, but I think it's 141 pages or so, and that would just make the packet needlessly larger than what it needs to be. And so the information that they go over in the video is in the publication. There's a lot of information. Kind of saw the opportunity on short notice, and so quickly registered it and attended it. Otherwise, I would have been eager to share it with you for anybody that wanted to participate. But this way, you have the link to the information and the video. You can watch it and read it on your time when you have time. I think the importance of why I wanted to attend the workshop and also share information with you is because previously in the old ordinance that was adopted in 1991, we just had one thing that was called home occupation. And that was basically the umbrella for a number of home occupations. The old ordinance, one weakness is we didn't really speak to what was allowed and what was also prohibited. We gave kind of parameters as far as a person was following such parameters, then we could deem it as a home occupation. And if approved, they could operate that home occupation at their residence. One of the new things that we've done in our new ordinance and is recommended in the presentation by Michigan Association in the presentation that I attended is the idea of separating, having two different classifications, one being a home occupation and the other being home-based limited business. The biggest key when you look at our definitions in the ordinance is that a home occupation is basically done by the resident of, and a home-based limited business can involve employees who do not necessarily reside in the residence. And so by having those two different classifications, and of course we have two different processes. Home occupation now is just administratively approved. As I indicated in the memo to you guys, to the Planning Commission, we have yet to have any applications for a home occupation or a home-based limited business, but that doesn't mean that we won't have them in the near future. I did get one inquiry from a person who is looking to, if they needed to get a home occupation permit of being an independent photographer, and talking with the person over the phone, getting an idea of exactly what they wanted to do. They basically wouldn't need a home occupation because they weren't using their home or residence for anything related to taking photos. Basically, this person was, they had a phone number, they had an email, they would be contacted to take pictures, and then they would meet that person on a site, not on their residence, and take pictures. And so basically there was involved no kind of business at the actual residence. And so they didn't need to apply for a home occupation. I did let them know if at any point they change and they actually use their residence for any kind of studio, or the clients are meeting them there, then they would qualify and they would need a home occupation. But until then, they wouldn't need one. Another difference that I noticed in our ordinance, our new one, versus the old one that was also talked about in the presentation, that I thought was key is, as I mentioned before, in the old one, we basically gave parameters of what you had to follow for the home occupation, but we didn't come out and actually say, these are home occupations that what we believe as home occupations, and then a list of prohibited business activities. And we have that in the new ordinance. The list in their publication as provided is much more lengthy than ours, but we have a starting point. We also have in our ordinance, I think where it is listed, it states at the end that basically if a business use is not listed, then it automatically would be viewed as a home-based limited business and then be treated as with the special use permit process that a home-based limited business would need. Home-based limited businesses, as I said before, home occupations are now administratively approved, but if it is a home-based limited business, that would still go to the Planning Commission and be handled as a special use, which a new change with our punch list that was amended, special use permits are now just handled at the Planning Commission. They will not be going to the Board of Trustees for final approval. So some changes. We haven't had as I said before, we haven't had a home occupation application. And when we do, they will be handled administratively approved. But just the idea of getting you guys acquainted with the home-based limited business. We will hopefully in the future be seeing applications for that, and then bring it to the board. I guess the last thing that I'd like to include is what I enjoyed maybe most about the presentation that I attended, and they have the information in there, is they give examples of basically they give you a picture and from, and they would say, from the outside, is this a home occupation? And we'd all kind of take a guess, and it would just look like a home. And then they would go deeper into the details of exactly what was going on at that residence and whether it was a home occupation or not. So that was kind of an interesting part of the presentation where you got to learn how to identify exactly if it's a home occupation or a home-based business or neither. So, any questions?
I see Commissioner LaBelle has had his hand up, so we'll go to him.
Yeah, Peter, just a couple questions. So in the home occupation, do clients physically need to come to the property to deem that a home occupation?
Well, so basically, if they're not, because the home occupation as it's defined, business occupation or similar activity, limited scope, intensity, undertaken for compensation exclusively by members of the household on land occupied by the household's principal dwelling. And so if it is not, if there's nothing of the business that's actually where a client is coming to the residence, or they are actually using the residence for part of the business, then basically you want to have a home occupation.
Does that include digital meetings such as this?
So, or I guess, give me an example, is it?
Well, if I'm a
for-
real estate agent and I'm doing something digital for a client over the phone at my house, does that count as a home occupation?
I think in that sense it could. I know one of the examples in the presentation is they talked about if a teacher was teaching virtual classes from their home. That would be a home occupation. Of course, then if students were actually coming to the home, then it would become something else, more of a school activity. And so, yeah, if you were using your like an office setting at home and doing virtual presentations or meeting with clients, yeah, that could meet as a home occupation.
Is there a fee that the township requires from that person to have that home occupation?
Yeah, there is a fee and it's a permit for home occupation. Yep.
Is there an hour limitation on that to deem that a home occupation? So if, for example, my past background is a professional golfer. I have extensive knowledge about the golf swing. If I put a net up in my basement and I give a lesson for 1 hour a month, is that deemed a home occupation?
Well, one of the requirements of home occupations is
Or does it have to be my primary source of income?
no, well, say that again.
I said, would it need to be, or I said, if I'm only doing it 1 hour a month, I'm not saying that I am, I'm just hypothetically saying.
Yep.
If I were to put a net in my basement and give lessons to people that would like one, I did it 1 hour a month. Does that deem it a home occupation? If not, is there an hour threshold, or does it have to be my primary source of income to qualify as a home occupation?
No, it doesn't have to be your primary source of income to qualify as a home occupation. I would say that if somebody were, teaching classes or using their home for some kind, like I said, teaching them, whether you're teaching piano lessons or teaching golf or whatever, then yeah, that would qualify as a home occupation. The hours listed, that's part of the application as far as when you're going to be open or when they're, or if it's just by appointment only. But that's part of, yeah, that would be in the application.
So during a pandemic, when teachers are having to teach from home virtually, they would have to come file for a home occupation permit. I'm just curious because I think it's extremely silly if I'm understanding it correctly, and almost highly unenforceable.
Well, keep in mind that under the former ordinance, they would have had to come to the planning commission for that home occupation permit.
I understand. So they're in a
Well-
pandemic, forced to teach from home, or whether they're in the school or home. So you're saying they would have to come and get a permit, and they would physically have to pay for that to teach their kids, which they've been mandated to do. Am I understanding that correctly?
So what we did with this ordinance is we took a process that was a planning commission action and had a fee of $300 some odd and made it an administrative permit. That permit does have a nominal charge. It's $25 for a year. That obviously we'll be looking at the fee schedule again next year, and maybe there's a reason to make an alteration to that. But that's where it's set right now. But it was set to be an administrative process, so it'd be very simple.
Yeah, I don't think you're answering my question.
Well, I'm going to finish it. First of all, we do not go hunting for people with regards to home occupations. Nobody's patrolling the streets or knocking on doors. So teachers can teach all day long, and probably nobody would ever know that they're they're technically having a home occupation in their home. So we're not going out, we're not ticketing people for this. Generally, if we get a complaint about something, then Peter would go out and check into that. And if they do need a permit, or if they're operating outside of the requirements, we would certainly work with them on that. But this is not a case where anybody is not going door to door and checking, do you have a home occupation or not?
Okay.
But like I said, I want to make sure and make clear what the big change we made was to make this an administrative process with a nominal fee and a whole lot easier to get the permit than it was set up before, where it had to come to the planning commission.
Yeah, and I commend that change. I think that's wonderful to kind of help expedite that for the person applying for it. I was just trying to get a gauge on the parameters of how, what that really, how do you know if you fall under that? Because
Yeah.
the way Peter explained it, I mean, that could mean pretty much everybody in a pandemic.
There's certainly it can. One of the reasons why we have this process, there's really two reasons. One is that we want to encourage economic development. Business startup in a home is the best way to start up a business. It's inexpensive and allows you to scale up slowly. But there always comes a point where business activity outgrows the home. And so our home occupation and home-based limited business standards are designed to help put some brackets around what kind of business activity can take place in a home without creating problems for the neighbors. The other part of it is that some business activity needs a permit, that they want to have a something from the township that says that what they're doing is appropriate. And so this zoning permit process allows certain activities that where having a permit is beneficial to them for insurance purposes, for other private reasons, allows them to come in and seek that permit and have an answer from the township for a nominal fee to confirm that they're operating within our parameters.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a good discussion. I do think though that that the whole, e-commerce and movement of things online, because traditionally, the way I've always conceived of this was that, the idea that if you do have people coming to your house for whatever reason, whether it's a beauty shop or psychotherapy or photography or whatever it is, that that should be regulated in some way, and that the township should be able to monitor what's going on there, make sure it's not disruptive to the neighbors and all that sort of thing. If you have stuff that's being done 100% online, I think that begins to, it's not the same thing anymore, right? Because the footprint of your house could be totally unchanged and nobody's coming to your house. Like you said, you wouldn't even know that it was going on. So perhaps it already is. But I guess what I'm saying is, it does seem like there's going to have to be some judgments made, presumably by you all, by township staff. Where does one thing leave off and the other one begin? What is the tripwire for when a permit is actually even required? You mentioned about, obviously if people are coming to the house, that would be a much easier kind of call. There was one up on Lincoln that we did, as I recall, it was like a home, it was like landscaping, and he was just storing the stuff at his house, but nobody was coming to the house. But that would still be a home occupation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, basically what he was using his home for the storage of his materials with the business. So everything with his landscaping business, the materials, the equipment, anything he used was basically being stored in his garage. And so, he was using the residence for the business.
Yeah, so that fell under that umbrella then. Okay. Other questions for Peter? Let me ask this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but do you all envision that the way this is going to work going forward is that someone will contact the township office, talk to you all, and you all will decide or determine, is it a home occupation? Is it a home limited business? and then determine what comes to us and that sort of thing? Or will we be called upon to make some of those judgments?
I would
No,
say, yeah, go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
I was, I mean, one of the biggest keys to differentiate between if it's a home occupation or a home-based business, and the home-based business will come to you is if there's going to be any employees. And so, you know, to
Well, that's
use
true.
the example of if someone's teaching golf lessons or piano lessons, if I'm just the one that's doing it and I live there at the home, then that's a home occupation. If I'm doing it at my home, but then I have, you know, a couple other instructors that are coming to my house and also instructing and teaching, then that's a home-based business.
Okay, yes, okay. So all that other stuff about what even needs a permit versus what doesn't need a permit is going to get sorted out at your level and not at our level.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now, there's also, like I said, in the ordinance, it lists different activities, and it states any use not specifically listed may be approved with a special use permit as a home-based limited business. So, you know, there is some, like I said, we actually have a list of allowable uses, but if someone has an idea that basically doesn't fit, then, you know, we can consider it, but it won't be me considering it. It'll be brought to the planning commission because it's not listed.
All right. Other questions on this topic? Okay, well, thanks very much for that. And as Peter mentioned, we've got the links. So as you're setting up the Yule log, you can click on the links and spend a couple hours and watch some training videos.
But if I may, just to kind of put a capstone on it, the video would be good to watch. The publication, if you prefer to read, is a very good one. The reason is this is, as I think Doug alluded to, a rapidly changing landscape related to work and where work happens and how work happens. And so it is, even though we have updated our ordinance, it is an issue that probably will be coming around again. And the information that they provide even suggests some ways we might be able to improve our ordinance even further as it relates to the pandemic related changes in the character of work. So it's good to look at these things. If the Plan Commission would like to have bring this up, certainly at any time we can make sure it gets back on the agenda. But it's something that, as I said, it's likely we'll be looking into this again as time goes on.
Okay, very good. Anything else? All right. So then the next item of new business is adoption of annual report from the Planning Commission to the Board of Trustees. So the Planning Commission does provide an annual report to the Board of Trustees, and this annual report, which comes from us, magically appears through the efforts of other folks, and they're always very good, very thorough, and very detailed, useful reports. And so that's what you have in your packet here. It lists all of the different actions that were taken over the past year, special use permits, site plans, good number of site plans. If you looked at those, it was kind of a trip down memory lane. Rezoning applications, the text amendments for the zoning ordinance, and then other items of business and or discussions that took place. So this is something that we normally approve and then send on to the Board of Trustees, but it's on the floor if anybody has any discussion over it, anything that you think was omitted or that you want to just revisit for further discussion at this time. I do think it was very good. So Commissioner Lapp?
Yes, under other business, I attended the Planning Michigan conference this year. I don't know, does that qualify as a training session?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so presumably that item will get added under other items of business, probably at the top there. Anyone else that participate in any of those sorts of activities? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the annual report with the one minor change just noted.
So moved.
Motion is by Buckley to approve the annual report. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Darren. Further discussion? I'm going to go ahead and say we can do this by a voice vote unless anyone objects, voice and or hand. Further discussion? All in favor of approving the annual report with the one minor change as noted, please say aye and or give an affirmative hand signal. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I heard all affirmative, so motion carried. So our annual report is approved. Once again, thanks for preparing that for us. We appreciate it. So we're ready to move on to other business. These are items that have come up before, and they're coming back to us for further discussions and or updates at this time. So the first one is a proposal to update the private road ordinance. I believe we had a brief discussion about this last month. So I'll turn it over to Rodney and or Peter to reposition us as to where we are, what you need from us at this time, what you'd like from us at this time, and we'll go from there.
So this is the same material that was in your November packet. We included it again just to give anyone that had an opportunity to think about this or any additional thoughts that came to mind about the private road ordinance or private roads in general. I just want to give you an opportunity to share those with us. Basically, we'll be taking the comments that came from our November meeting and anything that comes tonight, and using them to get started on preparing an updated private road ordinance for you to take a look at. Just invite any other comments you may have.
Okay. So it's open for comments. Commissioner Thering.
Yeah, just reading some of this on page 15, number 2, the fourth box down. I just had a thought. I hope it applies. What if somebody had an existing project that was approved and they did not meet that, not all their lots were filled. And, maybe they were very close to the minimums, but not quite. Is there some way that they would be allowed to continue if it was already approved?
Well,
And I'm not talking like night and day difference. I'm talking, maybe they're a couple of feet one way or another. Maybe it's not a big deal to the project, but if I had a project that was already approved.
What I will say is this about that. I think the key element here is the standards the minimum standards that we would include would be designed to address the specific existing roads we have in the township. For example, a new private road, let's say a new private road had to be 24 feet wide to meet the standard we set for new private roads. Well, if we have an existing road that may be as small as 16 feet wide, that's still more than sufficient to allow, for example, emergency vehicles to get down it. As long as it's good surface, 16 feet wide, you can get around a car that might be on one lane. It's not that's tight, but you can get around it. So we would be looking at this particular issue and looking at our existing private roads and designing the existing standards to address that. Where typically we have a problem is where you have an existing road. For example, the Remus Road, now that where the jail project is going to be. Now that's not a private road; that's a public road. But that stretch of Remus Road east of the Maury Courts facility had deteriorated down to essentially a single lane, 2-track. It was not much more than that at one point. And so that road was not really sufficient to be able to function properly for the jail or for almost anything, because it had been allowed to essentially through maintenance, limited maintenance, had been allowed to deteriorate down to that point. Those are the kind of situations we'd be looking at, where you have a single lane road where if a car is disabled in it for whatever reason, all of a sudden you can't get an emergency vehicle back there. People can't get out. Those are the kinds of conditions we would want to be trying to get improvements done on. But a case where a road might be, as you said, a foot or two short of the current standard, it probably would still meet our minimum existing condition standards, because those would be deliberately set at a lower level. And like I said, we're going to be looking at the existing roads and trying to set them accordingly.
Thank you.
Commissioner LaBelle?
Yeah, just a question about that. So like, I think that Malley project had come in front of us a while back, and there was discussion about that private road there being a little bit of deteriorating, through traffic, that type of thing, and emergency vehicles. So there is no grandfathering in. If we were to pass this, basically, it appears to me that any road that doesn't meet compliance would immediately have to be brought up to code compliance, address all these things in the ordinance. And does that mean that's done at the property owners or people along that road at their expense?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would disagree with you that existing roads would immediately have to be brought up to current standards. That's actually the reason why we would have a set of minimum existing condition standards that are designed for the character of our existing roads, so that those roads can stay as within that realm. And quite frankly, the only time they would need to be changed is if somebody was going to expand the road, lengthen it, add new land to be served by it, or as was noted by Commissioner Thering, if somebody wanted to build additional houses, divide land that's already served by the road to create additional lots. At that point, then, if the road truly is substandard, even to those minimum standards designed for safety, then yes, in order to be able to do those things, build new houses, divide, create new lots, the road would have to be updated as part of that process. But the road, if they're not making any of those alterations, then it would not immediately need to be updated.
And is that cost on the person that's making the change, or is that on anybody that's part of that road?
That's definitely a good question.
Or is that negotiable, I guess?
Yeah,
with the people affected.
Yeah, so some existing roads have maintenance agreements where these things are addressed, cooperatively, and the cost is allocated among all the property owners. There are some cases where there are no maintenance agreements, and whoever is most motivated just simply takes care of the road. Often the person at the end of the road, because they're the ones that have to get out from the end. So it is going to somewhat depend on the circumstance. If somebody wants to extend the road and it needs to be improved, it's likely going to be that person seeking to extend the road to serve their land that would end up having to pay the cost, because of course they're gaining the benefit. But it would definitely be a case-by-case basis based on the conditions associated with that particular road.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the situation that comes to mind is they're not looking to extend the road. They're not looking to really do anything with the road. They're looking to maybe just build a building there because of whatever business they want to do there. And if that it sounds to me that that would enact bringing that road up to the standards that are kind of outlined in here. Is that correct?
Well, if you were talking particularly about North Packard Road by the Malley property there, that road, quite frankly, is sufficiently wide for two vehicles to get by one another. There's reasonable drainage. It's not the best condition, but it's not in bad condition. So I would say that there's not anything that would trigger a need to update it immediately because it would meet the likely minimum standards we would put into the document. The same is true actually for all the other private roads in that area up there.
But the one on East Remus where the jail would go, that
Well-
road would most likely need some work, and therefore the jail, since they're going to be building it, would have to do that.
Well, in this case, as the road was, this is a condition that was in when they initially were looking at that property, where it was down essentially to a 2-track single lane through there. Then yes, it needed to be updated. We let the jail know. Of course, it became a condition of their special use permit. Ultimately, the road commission did make those improvements. The road now is up to the specs of the road commission. The turnaround area has been improved. So the road, so it's ready to go. So yes, in that case, the county did step forward to make the improvements that were needed.
Okay.
And in fact, they're going to make more because they're going to be paving that road. Not all of it, but
And that's great. I think they're kind of an exception because, we're from the private sector, entrepreneurs, business owners, business developers, and, small business that is. So I look at any additional expense for a small business to get started or to grow really hinders them to grow. In the case of the jail, obviously, it's all, taxpayer funded plus grants, whatever the funding is coming from. It's different. It's not somebody really from the private sector. So I'm just really sensitive to that. That's why I was asking the questions. I'm just trying to understand it the direction that our township is going over the last 5 years is not in a positive direction from a development standpoint. And we're falling right in line with the city of Mount Pleasant, which is hindering growth in our township. And granted, what we just passed, we've done some projects, which is great. I think that's great. There's more regulations, there's more of this, there's more of that. It's making it more difficult for people to build and grow. And frankly, they're all the rumor on the street: stay away from the city of Mount Pleasant, stay away from Union Township. That's what I continue to hear from people all around the state of Michigan, not just in Isabella County. So that information has grown throughout the state, just whether you know that or not. And that's, I'm not going to point fingers at anybody. I'm just going to say over the last 5 years, it's moved in that direction. Prior to even me being a planning commissioner, it started, and it's even gone more that direction since I've been a part of it.
Well, let me give you a couple examples that may be helpful here. One particularly, those roads up there around the Malley property. Some of them are private, some of them are public. One of the public roads is Airport Road, which is in terrible shape, far worse than the Packard Road is. That's an area that the township has made an extensive effort and worked with the county to expand our East Downtown Development Authority district. That was a project we worked on over this year, and the Board of Trustees took their final action in November to approve the expansion of the East DDA district to include all of that land that surrounds the Malley construction property, and those private roads include Park Place and Park Drive and Corporate Way and Corporate Drive and Packard, and with the intent to target some East DDA district economic development funds to improve those roads so that they can actually be incorporated into the public road system as all-weather, all-season roads that suitable for heavy truck traffic. That's all. Much of that land is industrial, so we're actually putting the township resources to that process. We worked with the county to negotiate with the county to get an expansion of that district. They were initially reluctant to go along with it. But in the end, we were able to work that out with them. And so we are putting township resources to academic development projects in that area. There is money in the East EDA district budget for 2022 to pursue some of those projects. Long term, we're trying to work on getting all of those roads up to public road standards. With regards to the typical situation for private roads, it's far more typical that private road will be kind of a rural residential area. And we have a private road in the township. It's one that is on my mind as we're looking at this, that accumulated over time. It was essentially a shared driveway that kept getting extended. Parts of it are sort of 2-lane width, but much of it is a single lane. Some of it's paved, some of it's not. And there is land off the end of this road that there are several vacant parcels, some large, some small, that are beyond the end of the road, whatever form it may be in, that I'm sure somebody's going to want to build on at some point. But right now, there's not an option for them to build on it because they don't have any road frontage. And so the process of right now, our private road ordinance would require them to fix the entire road up to the current county road commission standards in order to be able to build on it, on those vacant parcels. So by updating our private road ordinance, we can create an ordinance that actually would be more effective and be designed, I think, to work better with some of these existing situations in a manner that will allow for potential expansion, will allow for potential new growth or new construction on these existing roads, while ensuring an improving situation related to safety, particularly for emergency emergency vehicles. This is really the key, that we want to always make sure that we can get a full-size fire truck down that road, and that it can maneuver where it needs to go to be able not only go down the road and provide those services, but also be able to get out. And so that's really the direction we're trying to go with making changes. So where changes are being made, it's really to make sure that that level of safety that is expected by those homeowners can be provided by our fire department and by other emergency responders.
And I support everything that you just said. Like I said, the concern is just making sure there's not undue burden, cost wise, on either a business or a homeowner that they go, well, this is where I'd like to build my house, or I'd like to put a business, but because of the road condition, I got to really redo the road, and I can't afford to fork out 50 or 100,000, whatever it's going to cost to do it, on top of whatever I'm putting into my business, because that's going to probably most likely be a third or a quarter or half of what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. So that's really my only concern there. I think all your comments, I completely support the safety and all that. I 100% behind that.
Well, and thank you. That's really why we propose to do this with the Plan Commission. A private road ordinance actually is not a zoning ordinance. It's not the type of ordinance that actually normally comes to the Plan Commission. But we felt like this was the best approach to ensure that what we get is the right approach ultimately for Union Township. And so that's why we're going to be bringing you the draft and working with you on it. And so your comments are right on the money to looking at that, and we'll certainly keep them in mind as we're putting it together. And obviously, as I said, you'll have the opportunity to take a look at the draft and have plenty of influence on what final product might go to the Board of Trustees for their consideration.
Okay, thanks, Rodney.
Commissioner Buckley.
Just more of a side note observation, and maybe Rodney even, Rodney just mentioned cited the 16-foot width as being, likely something that's acceptable for a private road in terms of emergency vehicles. And maybe there's just a number you're throwing out, but I would actually take a little bit of issue with that, because in a rural area where there's not hydrants necessarily within reach of a structure fire, you're going to see emergency vehicles going in both directions simultaneously, not just one way. And so putting two 40-ton trucks next to each other, crossing paths, and while keeping their wheels off the shoulder of the road where they might become inextricably stuck, may require more than 16 foot. But that's just an observation on my part. That's and like I say, maybe you were just throwing that number out as just a figure to use rather than something that's being codified right now.
And I appreciate that, and it really is at this point just a number being thrown out. One of the other consultations we're going to be making is with the fire department, and to get an idea from them what works and what doesn't, and so we can make sure that gets incorporated.
Mhm.
So then, this is a good discussion. Items 3 and 4 were brought to us as questions from last month. The question about paving, we've sort of been dancing around that in a way, or at least discussing it indirectly. And then the idea of a special assessment district for maintenance. Let me just clarify, are you talking about just setting it up in such a way that the same option that currently exists for non-private roads would exist for private roads, namely the property owners, if maintenance were needed, the property owners would a special assessment district would be created? Or are you talking about something else, something more mandatory or just different?
Well, for number 4, one of the options is to for a new road to mandate a special assessment district, that if somebody wanted to develop a new private road, that they would be that developer, because at the time they're doing a new private road, the developer controls all the land, so it's very easy to set up a special assessment district while they have all the votes. That we could require in the ordinance that they set up a special assessment district, which then sets up the funding mechanism. It would not be a requirement for existing roads. Right now, it's an option that any residents along an existing road could seek that, just as some have for some of the public roads.
Yeah.
But the idea in the ordinance for private roads, if it was a new road, we would recommend that we consider requiring that special assessment district. So funding is kind of automatic.
How would that work though? If you're building a new development and you're subdividing it, and you've got these lots and you're going to build homes on it or whatever, and you're making this private road, the special assessment district would be assessed on lots that aren't even sold yet, so that they would kind of be factored into the cost of the eventual properties that got built there. Or I guess I just want to understand that better.
Yeah, this happens right now actually with Consumers Energy, where there can be special assessment district for street lighting, and yes, it will be on each lot as it's created. So at the start, basically, there's one lot. There's the property that's owned by the developer, and so the special assessment is on that one property. As it's divided out, it carries over to each of the created lots that are developed as part of the project.
Okay, so it would appear as an item on the eventual tax bills of those lots.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are there any issues if the project is slow to develop and the lots eventually, some of those, it's years before some of those lots get actually built on and sold and all that sort of thing? Does that create cash flow problems for the township or anything like that?
Well, it doesn't create for the township, but it would be on the tax bill, so there would be a charge above and beyond just the land value property tax. They would have that.
The developers paying it until the lots are sold. Is that how it works?
That's how it would work. Yes.
Okay. All right. I understand. Okay.
And of course, the one thing to keep in mind with a special assessment is it would be the developer and any future owners that directly benefit. The township it gets no significant benefit from those funding. It's just it's turned around and used for the improvements or maintenance on that road.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We've got Commissioner Thering first, and then Buckley.
Hey, I'm not quite sure how I feel about requiring, this is number 3, all private roads be paved, although I know I would want to live on one. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Although if it is a new road, even if it's a dirt road, I would not have any issue to a special assessment district being developed because that will need maintenance, or potentially someday maybe the landowners would want it paved. But I'm just curious what anybody else thinks about the requirement. Again, I would choose to live on a paved road. I just don't know, are there some projects out there that are worthwhile that maybe they just don't want to pave it? But definitely for the assessment.
Yeah, if anybody has any opinion on that, now would be a good time to express that. We'll go to Commissioner Buckley and then anybody else can jump in.
I think it's a good point to consider, in terms of the requirement for paving. I can't imagine a residential district being constructed in this day and age that would be considered desirable if it was an unpaved road. So whether it's required or not, I'm not sure that a developer is going to make the decision to build out a subdivision and opt not to pave it. I would say, just in generally speaking, I do absolutely support the special assessment district for maintenance on new builds. And I know I know Phil, you were dealt with it as well, having gone through our own subdivision and dealing with trying to raise signatures and whatnot for a special assessment district. It's far easier to buy a home that has an assessment already on it, that assessment remains in perpetuity with the building, and when the road requires a repave and in 20-25 years that the funds are already there. It makes for just a much easier opportunity to maintain home values and maintain the beauty of a neighborhood without having to ask people, potentially in poor economic times, depending on the timing, to have to come up with additional money just to maintain a road. So I am in support of that. But yeah, the paving question is a good question. Do we absolutely have to require it, or will the market work itself out and answer that question for us?
Yeah, I laugh or smile because it predates Ryan, but when I bought my home in our neighborhood, the roads were not paved yet, and it was a good several years before they were. And the only part I had about it was when the neighbor would take their pickup and just drive at 40 miles an hour, and it was bang, bang, bang with the holes. But anyway, so we're back to Commissioner LaBelle.
Just a couple of comments. I agree with Commissioner Thering. I don't really think that ought to be a requirement. I also agree with Commissioner Buckley. I think any developer is probably going to go in and pave it anyway. I wouldn't make it a requirement. I think it'll probably just work itself out. There may be an instance, maybe farther out, maybe in a rural area or agricultural area, maybe, family puts in 4 or 5 houses for their family and they keep it a dirt road. I don't know. I just probably wouldn't make that a requirement. One question I did have for either Rodney or Peter, and pardon my ignorance regarding the special assessment. If we have a neighborhood road such as where Ryan lives there, I think, is that McGurk, Ryan, McGurk Street? Because that was just paved just earlier this year. Is that right?
That's correct. That was an assessment district that was created for that.
Yeah. So if you're a homeowner in there and you do not, and you just want to, let's hypothetically say I lived in there and I went around to all the neighbors and said, hey, I'd really like to repave the road. How many people want to chip in? Do I have to involve the township, or can I just raise the funds amongst me and the neighbors to do it? Because I don't really want to pay the exorbitant fees that the township charges in the assessment district.
Well, okay. I would disagree with the characterization that they're exorbitant. They've actually been, I think, reduced. They were not exorbitant before. Having worked with other communities, our fees are actually significantly less than most communities charge for maintaining those assessment districts. But a private road can be managed privately. So yes, and some are. As I said, if they don't have a maintenance agreement, the pass the hat method is really the only way to get something done. And usually in that case, it involves exactly what you said, a motivated resident who is willing to go around and usually is willing to fund a good portion of the project. But yeah, absolutely. The private road can be managed privately, can be paved privately. The township doesn't have to be involved. The special assessment district is simply a tool that makes it easier for people to budget and makes it easier for, especially for long-term projects like that repaving, where a significant sum of money needs to be accumulated over a period of time. The special assessment district is a good tool to be able to make that possible.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? So basically, this is going to come back to us at a certain point, probably as a draft ordinance, and we'll have a second crack at it. And we'll have additional discussion at that time. But any other comments or questions right now? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Lapp.
Yes, when Mr. Malley talked about the situation with his road on Packard, he asked about closing it. And Rodney said at this point, the road, that we don't currently have any mechanism for turning any road, either a public or a private road. What would you do? Just remove it? We don't have a mechanism for removing a road. Is that something that you've considered including or not?
So, right. So there's not a mechanism under the current ordinance to alter an existing private road or to remove it. Public road, yeah, there is. The County Road Commission has a process for a public road to be abandoned. In fact, they are going through that process related to what's called Transportation Drive, which is the little cul-de-sac road that is on the north side of the Road Commission property, because they would like to create some additional storage areas. And so they want to abandon a portion of that road, basically shorten it up so that they can make better use of their property. You will probably be seeing a site plan for that early in the new year. Yes, we'll be looking at that issue for private roads, because we'd like to create the mechanisms to be able to allow these private roads to be altered and such as needed. The Malley case is kind of unique. It is a private road. Those roads were supposed to be public. The developer didn't finish the job, and so some of them the roads that were finished are public, like Corporate Drive. But the roads that were not finished were left as private. They simply were not accepted. They actually have public rights of way because they were intended to be public roads, but they're not under the control of the Road Commission yet. So it's a little different creature. Mr. Malley thought initially that there was no right of way for North Packard Road. And that's part of the reason why he was claiming the ability to close it off. He was incorrect in that. There is a right of way for that road. It's long established. So we so far he's followed what he said he would do in the site plan. He's kept the road open. If you drive over there, you'll see a couple of signs that say road abandoned that he put up early on. That's a First Amendment issue. Nobody's going to make him take those down, but the road is not abandoned, and he's fully aware that he can't close the road. But yeah, so when you get an ordinance back, we'll be looking at that particular topic as well.
Commissioner LaBelle.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Commissioner Lapp. So if the public rights of way were not there, could he close the road?
So this becomes an interesting question, because courts have found, let's say there was no right of way there at all. The road is simply there. People travel back and forth on it. There have been many court cases addressing what's called an easement by use. I'm not an attorney, so I can't really speak to it from a legal perspective, but I'm certainly aware of many cases where roads were established, where roads were built, but nobody went through the formal process of establishing a right of way or an easement associated with them. Or in some cases, the road is in the wrong place. Older subdivisions, especially around some of our recreational lakes, where a subdivision was built, back in the 20s or 30s, the roads are often in the wrong place and completely outside of the right of way that was intended for them. And the courts have generally found that there's an easement by use that was established simply because the road has been there for a long time and has been used regularly. And in those cases, typically the judge, when there's a dispute, has sided with keeping the road open. Now, obviously, that's not the best approach, but we prefer to, especially up there by Mr. Malley's property, prefer to get those roads set up as public roads, Class A, all weather, all season, so that they can be used by the heavy vehicles that for industrial activities. But nonetheless, even if there wasn't an easement, in all likelihood, if that went to a court situation, that question of an easement by use would come up prominently.
So is it fair to say it'd be really difficult to, back to Commissioner Lapp's question, to actually remove a road, a private road I mean, not specifically to his case, but in general? Yeah.
So let's talk about, often there are cases where there are paper roads where a right of way was created, but the road never went through. We actually had a case like that. This is with a subdivision, of course, with the 4 Hacks project that we reviewed last year, the 4 Hacks condominium project, where there was an underlying subdivision plat that included roads at various lots, and it no longer made sense to develop that way. And so they went through the process to get that plat abandoned. Now, for subdivision plat, the only way to do that is through the courts. You actually have to have a lawsuit, and a judge has to make a determination to abandon the plat. But in a similar circumstance with a private road easement, let's say it's recorded at the county register of deeds, there's no plat involved, we could have a process whereby the township could recognize that road no longer needs to be there and allow it to be abandoned, and then they could obviously record that change at the Register of Deeds office. If you have a circumstance, I think it's going to be pretty unusual, but let's say there was a circumstance where there was a section of road actually developed, and the property owners want to make a change. They wanted to wipe the road out and do it differently. We would, by having something in the ordinance that allows for abandonment of an existing road, would allow them to be able to bring that before you bring their plans and allow you to approve that kind of a change. So it is definitely good to have it in the ordinance.
Okay, thanks, Rodney.
Other questions or comments at this time? Okay, we'll look forward to that in your future agendas. So the next item also, it's very similar in the sense that it was presented to us last month, and it's back for further comments and discussion, and that is the proposal to update the sidewalk and pathway ordinance. You have a memo from Peter from November. And again, outlining the rationale, points, specific points, and then kind of a outline of what's being proposed or what's planning to be proposed. So if Peter has anything to add at this time, you can go ahead and do so. Otherwise, I'll open it up for discussion.
I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay. So any further discussion on the material in this proposed sidewalk and pathway ordinance update? I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's well thought out and thorough. So similar idea in the sense of the next step would be to actually draft something and bring it back to us, or?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, happy to take comments and questions if people have them. Commissioner Buckley.
Just more of a comment that I think that overall it does. I like the idea of seeing a draft ordinance come back to us at this point. I do like that there is attention paid. I guess it'd be on 21 to inserting temporary relief from sidewalk construction policy into the updated ordinance. And so just in terms of number one, addressing how temporary relief is defined, but also potentially taking a look at what might be the best way to execute temporary relief. So I like the fact that that's something that's being considered. So all in all, I would look at this favorably.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Darren had his hand up.
Oh, me? I don't think I did, but
Okay.
yeah, I am also in favor of seeing the draft ordinance with these concerns in it.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, well, I think it sounds like we're good to go there, at least to move on to the next step. So then the next one is one that we did discuss briefly, but we didn't have I don't think we've had the fully fleshed out memo before us before. So, but this was a subject we were briefed on. So this is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. This was a while back that this was introduced to us. I think it might have even been over the summer. But now you're back and you've got a schedule outlined and some jobs for us, it looks like. So let me turn it over to Rodney and then to kind of lead us through the beginning of this discussion.
Well, thank you. This it has been quite some time since we talked about it. The township does have a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This is a document that is connected to some grant funding opportunities from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. They have recreation funding that's available, but in order to be able to access it, we have to have a current 5-year Parks and Recreation plan. Our plan was adopted in 2010, so it has expired as far as the state is concerned. It was the last document was actually prepared by a Parks and Recreation committee that was appointed. Stan Shingles was part of that. I think he noted at our previous meeting, and it was created with substantial assistance from a CMU professor in the recreation leisure services area of the university. And that professor is no longer available. He's retired. The department there is not interested in working with us on this project. They don't. What I was basically told is that with his retirement, they don't do that anymore. So it's something that we're looking at doing in-house. We'd like to update the plan so we can be eligible for additional funding. The township has benefited from the tribe's 2% funding on some projects like improvements to Jameson Park. But there are additional opportunities that can come, including potentially new parks or certainly pathways and other recreational facilities that might benefit from some access to those DNR funds. So with that in mind, we do need to update it. We're following the Michigan DNR guidelines for developing these types of plans. And so the schedule and the various tasks that you see here are taken from those guidelines. The number of these items are staff related. We're going to be updating some of the basic information that's in the current plan. And the idea is that at an upcoming meeting, we'll bring that material back to you. Two key early items that we'd like to work on is one, we'd like to work on a survey that we would ultimately send out as one of our elements for public participation. And so we'll be coming back to you, both looking at trying to develop some and identify the types of questions we should be asking, and also who our audience or audiences should be. We may do more than one type of survey, depending on who we should be looking at from a perspective of getting input back. To help kind of guide that process, one of the early steps we'd like to take with you is to ask you to take a look at the various parks and recreation goals that exist right now. And so those have been included in your packet. We have the first item in the packet, starting on page 26, are the actual goals and objectives that are included in the current Parks and Rec plan. And then following that, we have the current what we refer to as the ends policies that were established by the Board of Trustees. This is part of their policy governance manual that guides their activities as the elected board. The ends policies guide what we do as staff and frankly what you do as a planning commission. The ends policies are essentially the desired outcomes that the Board of Trustees has identified that they want to see happen through our efforts as a township government at all the levels, from staff to the planning commission and otherwise. And a number of these are directly connected to parks and recreation and health and active lifestyle type issues. So the ends policies I think absolutely need to be a key guiding force in what we do at all levels, because we're trying to implement these desired outcomes. Following that section on page 29, we have the master plan general goals, and you'll see a couple of those that talk about natural features and also recreation elements. And then following that, page 30 and 31 are the goals and objectives that are associated with another older plan, the Greater Mount Pleasant Area non-motorized plan that was developed in 2011. And then the last one is from the City of Mount Pleasant, from their Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which they adopted just this past year, and some of their recommendations, some of their key concerns that they have. So I want to include all this with the idea to ask you to take a look at it. Certainly happy to take any comments tonight, but would like to identify what you as a planning commission, representing the constituencies that you represent, whether your neighborhood, your family, those who might have school-age children or older adults, or all those various elements, what you feel would be important from these lists that we should be making sure we focus on in developing things like developing our survey and starting the process of putting this plan together. Beyond this, we'll be, as I said, having some public participation activities, the survey being one of them, very important one, where we'll be trying to elicit some public input into these long-term priorities. But we want to start with you as a planning commission and what you know and what you feel is most important for us to be looking at as we're working on this document. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or thoughts.
Commissioner Lapp?
Yes, Rodney, would you be able to, maybe by the January meeting, provide a list of the 2010 goals that were met? For example, we have the dog park now, and some of those other things. If you could provide an update on any of the goals that were met, I think that would be useful in both the PR with the survey and pointing out what has been done and what still needs to be done. That would help us, I think.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that. Does anybody still have a need for a copy of the document? I said earlier this year, we mailed out copies of the plan So,
They were mailed out and apparently in a white binder, at least that's what I have,
Yep.
unless I had it lying around and I put it in there, but anyway, it looks like that.
yeah, I think we included the white binder so you would have space to add anything new or make changes. Any other initial thoughts?
I guess an initial thought from me anyway would be that I don't know. I mean, I definitely support the idea of a survey and touching base with the community and so on. I guess I'm gonna just from the quick look that I've done with it, I'm gonna say that my initial reaction is that this probably doesn't need to be a radical from scratch rewrite, but more of a tweak.
Right.
Perhaps even more of a tweak than our last master plan update was, in the sense that a lot of the objectives probably aren't that different than they were. I mean, obviously, if people have new ideas, they should be incorporated, but I'm hoping anyway that it doesn't need to be a totally new document. Commissioner Buckley.
Yeah, I mean, just an observation from me. I know that Rodney mentioned that the prior, the last survey, if it was 2010 that was done, had assistance from a faculty member at CMU. That faculty member is since retired. Is the intent to still potentially work with CMU or to work with some professionals that have some expertise and kind of developing and executing those types of surveys, or are we kind of at this point, are we kind of on our own? I'm just curious what the thought process is right now.
Well, you have me as one of those professionals. I've worked on and put together Parks and Rec plans before and put surveys together before. There is some money in the township budget potentially to involve a consultant or an outside agent where there might be a need, and frankly, a survey could be one of those ways we involved somebody from the outside for the work that was done on the DDA districts that included a survey of the local businesses, and we had a consultant that put that plan together for us. They were organized and managed the survey. The questions were still the questions that in this case the Economic Development Authority Board identified as most important, but the consultant did some of the legwork, and frankly, staff did some of the legwork to make sure that survey got done. There are a number of ways to approach that process, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But largely, this is intended to be done in-house. So
yeah. I'm not. I mean, for me, my concern, the reason I bring it up more so is not necessarily because I don't think that we can accomplish it, developing or putting together a survey that's in-house. I just know that in the past, Union Township has been a little bit hesitant to use things like social media and things like that might really extend the reach of the type of respondents that we get. And given the fact that we're talking about something that impacts virtually all constituencies in Union Township, I think it'd be nice to really explore how we get the survey out there. I think that's just as important as what's in the survey itself. So if there's opportunities to take a look at how we can kind of push that out there to a broader audience and to maximize the number of responses that we can actually get to something like that, it's just going to be the best, it's going to create the best scenario for all of us by having that type of large and robust response to a master plan that's going to be with us for a period of time. So that's my only observation on that sort of thing.
Other comments or thoughts at this time?
What I would suggest, if you would, take a look at those goals that, as I said, they've already been established one way or the other, either by the Plan Commission in the past, or by that Parks and Rec Committee in 2010, city, the other agencies, and from your perspective, and in relation to, as I said, to the things that are important to you and to those that you represent, your family, your neighborhood, those elements. Take a look at, and maybe you look at what are the 3 most important ones to you, or the 5 most important ones to you. You can kind of, I don't want to suggest any one way to review these goals, but take a look at and identify the ones that you feel are absolutely key to make sure that we are focused on as we're developing this updated document. And I'd like to, if you would, have you bring those to us at our next meeting. We'll have this item on the agenda again. And all of these goals are good ones. As you look at this, you're going to, there might be an inclination to go, well, we want all of these, and that may be absolutely valid. But we also want to kind of identify what are our key focal areas that we want to focus on. So anyway, take a look at it. Maybe do some prioritizing, however it works best for you. And we can, like I said, we'll have this on our next agenda. In terms of the document itself, our 2010 document has very good bones. I absolutely agree with the comments that we're not going to throw this document out and write a new one. It is a very solid document. It's well prepared, very well thought out. And so we'd be really looking at how can we improve it in terms of bringing it up to current, making sure we're reflecting our current priorities, and potentially, as I said, where new things have come up that should be considered, making sure those get incorporated.
Okay. Sounds good. Once again, any comments anyone wants to offer at this time? Okay, well, something to think about in the next month or so. If we actually get any snow, you can think about winter activities and that sort of thing. But yeah, we'll revisit this in January. All right. So then the last item is adoption of the amended meeting schedule. So I gather there was a change to the meeting schedule. I think I know what it is, but I'm not 100% certain. So I'll let you tell us what you're asking us to do here.
So the Board of Trustees at their December meeting adopted the calendar. And they did make one change, and that was to the joint meeting every year. Except not recently, but prior to COVID, every year there was an annual meeting where all of the boards and commissions were invited to meet together with the Board of Trustees. Typically, it was held at the Commission on Aging, and essentially council together. There were opportunities to report on things, but also, as I said, to have some back and forth discussion where there was needed, where there was opportunities to collaborate or counsel together on issues of interest. And that meeting is typically taking place in the spring. There was a date on the calendar, but that date ultimately the board realized that was not going to work well for them. And so at the December meeting, they made a change and reset the date for April 6th. That's the first Wednesday in April. It is actually normally our zoning board of appeals night, so there won't be a separate zoning board of appeals meeting in April. So for Ryan, you're going to see this on the January agenda for the Board of Appeals to approve. But anyway, so that is the change to set April 6th as this joint meeting date. And so we'd ask for your motion to approve the amended calendar to set that April 6th joint meeting date.
So moved.
Darren?
I
think there was a motion by Commissioner LaBelle, if I heard correctly, but did you have a comment, or were you going to make a motion or second a motion?
Well, I'll second it, but I also have a comment. I believe the reason was Supervisor Milky had mentioned that the week it was planned, it was sugar. Now it left me.
Was it spring? Is it a spring break? Yep.
Yeah. The spring break is for the schools that particular week, and in trying to have the most input from everybody. That's really, I believe, the bulk of the reason to move it to the 6th. And actually, and I'm sorry, Rodney, if you mentioned this and I just zoned out for a second, it was these meetings were usually in, I think, September.
Well, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. They were previously the two that we tried to set during COVID were both in the spring, but you're right. Previous to that, you're right. They were in September.
We as a board kind of discussed that because we'd start our ends process in May. We as a board kind of thought it would be nice to hear from all of our committees while everything's fresh in our head as we set our ends. Goals. So rather than listening in September, and a lot can happen between, as we all know, between September and in May when we set our ends. So that was kind of a big motivation we as a board had discussed. So hopefully we get some good feedback from all of our committees and formulate some ends that make better sense for our township.
Okay. So then the motion was by LaBelle with a second by Thering to approve the amended scheduled meetings for 2022. We'll continue to meet the third Tuesday of each month, but then there'll be the special joint meeting on the first Wednesday in April. So any further discussion? I'll ask just for a voice /hand signal vote on this one. All in favor, please say aye or raise a hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. So we are in compliance or in agreement with the township on the meeting schedule. One question that occurs to me when we talk about meetings, when we last discussed the issue of online versus in person, I think we had basically said we would do that out to the end of the year and then see what was going on. Now, we know what's going on, but I guess, have there been any changes at the state level or anything that would interfere with our ability to continue to meet online?
So the state legislature has had I think there's about 6 or 7 different bills that have been proposed to extend the authorization for electronic meetings in one form or another. The legislature adjourned their session for the holidays without taking action on any of them. So the Open Meetings Act authorization ends with the end of the year. And the corresponding emergency declaration from the County Board of Commissioners also ends at on December 31st. So at this point, starting in January, we will not be able to meet electronically. So our January meeting is anticipated to be in person. The legislature certainly in 2022 could come back and decide to extend it in some form, but I would suspect that certainly for the January meeting, it would not happen in time for that. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of interest to pursue that extension. The bills that have been introduced by legislators who have not gotten a lot of co-sponsors, especially not gotten a lot of co-sponsors from the more influential leadership members in either party. And so they just doesn't seem to be a lot of traction to get it done. Certainly, encourage you to contact your state rep, your state senator, and let them know if you'd like, what you think of this process and if you'd like it to continue. Hearing from the public is always a good way to move our elected leaders in Lansing to do something. But at this point, it looks like I would say definitely we'll be meeting in person in January. And I suspect we will be continuing to meet in person through 2022.
Interesting. What, I mean, the trustees have been meeting in person for a while now, correct?
Right. Since the late July was their first meeting.
Are there any, and I have to admit, I haven't been to those meetings. I haven't actually watched the recordings. Are there any distancing and or mask policies in place for inside the township hall for when you're all in the same room, or what?
More or less where you're comfortable. No rules in place. Some wear masks, some do not.
We will be, and certainly we'll have masks available. Anybody that would like to have a mask, if you don't have one and you would like one, we'll have masks available. We have them currently at the hall, we are, in fact, I was just talking with Lisa Cody earlier today about the need to make an adjustment to how the boardroom is set up. So right now it's set up kind of at a smaller scale just for the size of our 7-member board, but we'll need to obviously change that for our both larger plan commission, our larger economic development authority board. One of the things that has been noticed, I think Brian Milkey, the supervisor, commented on it at a previous meeting, that we have not had much in the way of public at the board of trustees meetings. People that typically had come in person in the past are not turning up, and that may be COVID related, may not, but so far there has not been much public available or in attendance. The other thing for us is that, if we need to hold a hearing, we may be looking at trying to set something up to have it over the Commission on Aging. The County Board of Commissioners is currently meeting at the Commission on Aging for their public meetings in person, and so that's one of the areas we're going to be looking at. That building had not been available during much of the pandemic period, but it sounds like it may now be available again as a possibility, especially for hearings. So.
Okay. I mean, it's not like things aren't like we're not still in the middle of something that's maybe going to be washing over us pretty good by that time next month, but we'll see.
Well, at our last meeting, I did invite individuals to let me know if they had a concern about returning to in-person meetings, and I would still invite that, because I'd like to know if you feel that you're just not comfortable returning in person. That will be important to know, and obviously we need to have a quorum first of all to be able to hold a meeting, but more importantly, we really need to have everybody be available and comfortable in whatever setting we're in. So if you do have a concern and you don't want to, we didn't have any comments at the time publicly, you're welcome to contact me privately, give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I will say I have a friend who is a planning commissioner in another community, a rural township downstate, and he made the decision. He said, I can't go back in person. Now, he's older, he has some health challenges. He just said, I can't do it. And in fact, he ended his term. He didn't seek reappointment because of this change. And so it is absolutely valid concern. And so, like I said, you're welcome to give me a call or send me an email, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. And obviously we'll do everything we can to provide a safe environment. And if I get a lot of concerns about coming into our boardroom, which is small, then perhaps we look at pursuing other options like the Commission on Aging, where we can spread out a bit more.
Yeah.
So
before I let Jim in, because I see he's got his hand up, I will say that I think that the timing is really, inauspicious at best, considering what they say is headed our way with the new variant. Even though they keep saying if you're fully vaccinated, you're safe, but on the other hand, who really knows? So yeah, I would much prefer being able to continue doing it this way compared to going back. And as much as I like our little township hall, I would prefer a space with greater ability to spread out if we are doing it in person. So I would just, speaking for myself, I'd encourage you to look into that. Also, I would ask you to send an email out before the end of the year to the full commission explaining the situation and asking the folks who are not here to contact you as well.
Okay.
Make sure everybody is in on that possibility, because I agree, we need to know ahead of time, if we're going to be able to make a quorum or not. Commissioner Thering.
I agree with everything you just said. And Rodney, I have a question. Could we take a poll of what we as a committee would like to do? Should legislation extend it? For example, I could say, yep, I want to stay just as we are if legislation would extend it. Therefore, January, whatever, 10th, they come out and say, yep, we're going to extend it. We're kind of off and running. We don't have to do anything other than just meet like we have been.
So what I would suggest is we certainly watch what the legislature is doing on this issue. If something changes, if a bill starts moving, especially if it passes one of the houses of the legislature and heads off to the other one, that we can follow up and put that kind of a poll together and see what your comfort level is. At this point, like I said, we don't have another option but to meet in person, after the 31st of December. So it really comes down to where we meet, sort of under what circumstances do we meet, but it may change. And it's, as I said, it certainly encourage you to contact your state rep, your state senator, and make your preferences known. They like to hear from you, and they really do respond best to hearing from the citizenry, even more so than they might if we made a sort of a township response to them, more official one. They really like to hear from the residents, so it'd be good to do that.
I'd just like the planning commission to know that if we're allowed, I'd like to stay remote due to what the activity that's going on, if it's possible. That's just my feeling.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Buckley.
Well, I personally think there's an argument to be made for virtual public meetings indefinitely outside of the COVID pandemic. It creates a lot more accessibility for people who might not otherwise attend, but that's neither here nor there. That's an entirely separate conversation. I am curious, as Commissioner Thering said, that it's kind of a pick your poison at the Board of Trustees meeting. Some people are wearing masks, some people are not wearing masks. Is the township in any way prohibited from establishing a requirement that essentially anybody that steps in the door is wearing a mask? I mean, are there, air purifiers have been demonstrated to be effective in terms of circulating the air and that sort of thing. If we're going to be meeting face to face, is it possible to just simply set some safety expectations as a commission in terms of how we approach those things when they come in, or are we not permitted to make those types of requirements?
The planning commission can't set a policy for the township hall. You as a commission can essentially decide individually to wear masks, and if all of you wear masks, then obviously that you as a commission essentially together would be doing that. I will say this: it has been my policy to wear a mask when I'm in a public meeting. I have attended some of the Board of Trustees meetings, and I have been wearing a mask. There certainly, as James said, some of the other board members have as well. My personal policy is to wear one, and it is what it is. But you as commissioners all can do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of setting the township policy, that has to be done by the township manager and by the Board of Trustees.
And that makes sense. But is there a desire from the township not to do that? Is there is there not support to do that, given the fact that, as several people have pointed out, what is currently still circulating in terms of the pandemic? Maybe that's not a question that needs to be answered here, but it certainly seems like it would be worthy of consideration for the powers that be that can make that decision.
Yeah. So the township has a COVID-19 response plan that has been updated a number of times. There was a long period of time where masks were mandated, both for the public coming in and for staff. For staff, the only time that we could take our masks off is when we were in our private workspace, our separate workspace. But that anytime for a while, anytime somebody came into that office, like somebody came into my office, then we both would have to wear a mask. That policy was relaxed last summer and has not been renewed. I'll certainly pass along your concerns to Mark Stuhldreher. And have a conversation with him about this. I plan to do that anyway, because we are, as I said, we're having to look at how do we hold these in-person meetings. So I'll certainly pass it along to him and make him aware of what your concerns about having some kind of a mask policy. As I said, right now, the best I can offer is that we would certainly have masks available. And if all the commissioners are wearing a mask, and like I said, I will be wearing one. I don't, there's no mandate on any other staff members, but you'll see me wearing one. I suspect if the vast majority of the people in the room are wearing masks, if we have any public come in, they would probably put one on as well. So,
have you been to Meyer recently? I don't think that's a reasonable expectation at all. Maybe in that type of situation, but there's precious little mask wearing in the general community from what I've observed.
Yeah, that's true. In the general community, I would agree with that. It is something, as I'll certainly bring it up to the township manager's attention, this is still a fluid issue. I agree with you. We have with the latest variant clearly coming on the scene very quickly and expanding very quickly. There may be a need to modify that plan again. It's just the nature of the pandemic.
Okay. All right. So then we've now reached extended public comment. So if there's anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not, they're welcome to do so at this time. We just ask you again, hit your raise hand button to be recognized. Give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue. Extended public comments open at 9:01. The public is still here, but the public is apparently not going to comment. Cut anybody off, but all right. Well, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and close that back up. So then the last item is final board comment. So we've had some discussion. Any final comment from board members? Commissioner LaBelle?
Yeah, just more of a clarification in regards to Commissioner Fuller. It's my understanding that he resigned effective immediately after the last meeting. Is that what you're under the impression as well, township staff?
So I'm not aware that he resigned after the last meeting. I've not seen anything from Commissioner Fuller. Sorry. I do know that the supervisor has had some conversations with him, but I don't know what, if anything, has come of that one way or the other.
Okay, yeah, I've communicated with him via text because I had heard that and confirmed that with him, and those were his text messages that he resigned after the last meeting. So I'll certainly reach out to him again, because does he need to submit something in writing, or
he should submit and he may have submitted a letter of resignation to the supervisor. It should also come to the Planning Commission chair. And it would be helpful if it came to staff too, but he should submit a letter of resignation to the supervisor and the chair at the very least.
Okay, because I mean, just based on the text conversation I had with him, it sounded like I mean, I'm implying that he just said, hey, I resigned after the last meeting. That implied to me, I assumed that he would have submitted something, but I don't have any confirmation of that. And if staff doesn't, then maybe he
Yeah.
didn't submit something.
Yeah, I don't have anything like that. If that's the case, it's very unfortunate. He has, of course, been a tremendous asset on the commission and a great voice. So it'd be very sad if he did.
I agree with you 100%. He's a great asset to this planning commission.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I haven't gotten official notification of any personnel changes on the planning commission. But since you brought that up, I am looking at the board expiration dates. Commissioner Buckley, Commissioner LaBelle, and Commissioner Darren's terms are ending in February, this upcoming February. So I'm assuming if folks are interested in being reappointed, they should be submitting their materials to the township relatively soon here. So.
I've already resubmitted. That's in the hands of the trustees at this point. So
Yes, and Commissioner LaBelle did as well. We decided to address, because there were several seats that needed to be filled. So we filled the seats that were immediately in 2021 going to expire. And then thought, because some of them were in February, that maybe other people would apply and would just take care of it. So we'll take care of some next month. Probably take care of the rest of them next month, I'm assuming. So.
Okay. Yeah, the 15th is a Monday, and our February meeting is the 16th. So if it could be taken care of in January, probably be better. But
I would imagine that's when it'll be. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I will talk with Supervisor Milky about that.
Yeah, the planning commission is unique among local boards and commissions in the state law, in that the state law says that if the commissioner's term ends and a new appointment has not been made, then that commissioner continues to serve. So there have been cases I'm aware of where commissioners have continued to serve, as of course Mr. Webster did, for many months after their term is actually up, because nobody new was appointed.
Right.
So for those that his term is up on the 15th, you can still, if no new appointment has been made, Mr. Darren, you can still attend on the 16th and be a part of that meeting.
very good. Any other comments from board members? Well, if not, then we've completed our agenda, so we'll stand in adjournment and wish everybody happy holidays, happy new year, and stay safe. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody in January.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Oh,
Bye, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.